criminology as part of a coursework. This journey through criminological thought will help us understand how society transitioned from mystical explanations of crime to rational, structured legal systems that influence us even today. And due to the time restraint, I'll be moving on to the evolution of criminological thought. And criminological thought has evolved through four broad phases. In ancient times, crime was linked to religious beliefs and superstitions. The pre classical era blamed criminal acts on supernatural forces. Then, during the age of enlightenment, rational thought began to take hold. Finally, in the modern era, these ideas matured into structured legal systems rooted in classical principles. And moving on further, coming to the pre-classical school, and we will be discussing historical background. The pre-classical period, spanning the 17th and early 18th centuries, was dominated by the belief that crime stemmed from demonic possession or evil spirits. With the divine right of kings prevailing, legal responses were arbitrary and brutal. Early thinkers like Hobbes and Locke began challenging these ideas, sowing the seeds for rational theories. And coming to the punishments and rituals of pre-classical school, punishments in this era were primitive and cruel, tried by ordeal involved walking of fire or submersion in water believed to reveal divine judgment. Trial by battle presumed God would favor the innocent. Torture was common to cure demonic possession. These irrational methods reflected a lack of legal structure or fairness. And coming to the key thinkers of the pre-classical school, important figures include St. Thomas Aquinas, who aligned divine and human law, King James, who linked crime to the devil in his book Demonology, and William Blackstone, who started leaning towards legal rationality. These thinkers shaped early criminal justice thought, though their views were still deeply religious. And coming to the pre-classical practices in ancient India, as you can see in the slide, ancient Indian justice included ordeal by fire and ordeal by water, similar to other societies. Sacred arts also invoked divine punishments, and interestingly, the Quran prohibited these ordeals, showing a divergence in early legal traditions. And coming to the classical school emergence and context. The classical school emerged during the Enlightenment as a response to the brutality of pre classical justice. Thinkers like Montesquieu, Rousseau, and Beccaria emphasized logic and reason. The movement aimed to make punishment rational, fair, and proportionate. Caesar Beccaria led this charge, calling for legal certainty and against capital punishment. And coming to the core principles of the classical school, key principles include proportionality in punishment, legal certainty, and the belief in free will. People commit crimes after weighing pleasure against pain. So, certainty of punishment, not its superiority, was seen as the best deterrent. The school emphasized the act over the intent and advocated for fixed, not discretionary punishments. And coming to the major contributors to the classical school, Beccaria advocated humane punishments and legal reform. Jeremy Bentham introduced the concept of hedonistic calculus, suggesting people avoid pain and seek pleasure. Robert Peel emphasized preventive policing and formed London's police force. These thinkers lay the foundation for modern criminal justice system. And coming to the impact on modern legal system, the classical school inspired codified laws like the Indian Penal Code and French Penal Code. Today's system reflects proportional sentencing, fair trials, and preventive policing. And moving into the comparative analysis. Due to the time restraint, I will be moving on further. And coming to the comparative analysis, this slide compares both schools. The pre-classical school was rooted in mysticism and divine judgments with irrational punishments. The classical school, on the other hand, emphasized reason, proportion, and legal clarity. This marked a shift from punishing the evil person to understanding the criminal act. And coming to the case studies, historical examples shows this transition. The Salem witch trials reflect the danger of pre-classical superstitions. The French Penal Code of 1791 and the Metropolitan Act of 1829 demonstrate how classical principles were applied to reform justice systems. And moving on further to the strength and limitations of the classical school. The classical school brought fairness and structure. It promoted legal certainty, and crime prevention. However, it assumed all individuals had free will, ignoring mental health, age, or socio-economic conditions. And coming to the influence on subsequent theories, later theories built upon classical ideas. The positivist school introduced scientific and biological explanations. Sociological and psychological approaches consider environmental and mental health. Despite their evolution, these theories retain the classical commitment to racial justice. And moving on to the last slide of the presentation, the conclusion. In conclusion, the shift from pre classical school to classical criminology makes a pivotal evolution from superstition to science, from divine judgment to legal certainty, though not without flaws. These schools laid the groundwork for modern criminal justice, reminding us that fairness and reason must guide the law. Thank you for the time.